You lean toward the fire. The light moves across your face. Something in your chest settles. You don't decide to relax. Your body just does it. For roughly 1 million years. This exact moment happened almost every single night of your ancestors' lives. Not occasionally, not as a treat, as a daily ritual older than language itself, older than agriculture, older than almost anything you would call civilization. What if this small circle of firelight is the reason you can imagine things that don't exist? Anthropologist Richard Wrangham spent decades studying what fire actually did to the human body and brain. His research, published in the book Catching Fire, argues that cooked food changed everything. Raw food takes enormous energy to chew and digest. Your gut has to work hard just to break down tough plant fibers and raw meat. Cooking does that work before food even reaches your mouth. That single shift freed up a staggering amount of energy. Energy that used to go entirely into digestion could now go somewhere else. Where did it go? Increasingly, into your skull. Your brain uses about 20% of your body's total energy, despite being only 2% of your weight. That is an extraordinary cost for any animal to pay. No brain that expensive could evolve without a matching energy source. Wrangham's evidence suggests cooked food was that source. Fire didn't just keep early humans warm. It subsidized the growth of the human brain itself, tipping the balance so that a bigger, hungrier brain became affordable for the first time. But energy is only half the story. The other half happened after the sun went down. Anthropologist Polly Wiessner spent years living among the hoansi Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert, recording what people actually talked about during the day versus what they talked about at night, around the fire. Her 2014 study, published based on decades of fieldwork, found something remarkable. Daytime conversation was almost entirely practical. Complaints, economic matters, like who owed what to whom, gossip about disputes and daily events. Useful information, but narrow in scope, rarely reaching beyond the immediate present. Firelight conversation was different, almost completely different. At night, around the flames, the same people told stories, myths, histories of distant ancestors, tales about relatives living far away, about spirits, about the origins of animals and the origins of the world itself. Wiessner found that story time didn't just replace daytime talk. It activated a different kind of thinking entirely. Firelight conversations stretched the imagination outward, toward people not present, events not witnessed, and worlds that existed only in the mind. Why would darkness do that? During the day, there was too much to do. Foraging for food, childcare, repairing tools, tracking animals across the landscape. The mind stayed anchored to immediate, physical tasks, because survival demanded it. But once the sun set, physical work became difficult and often dangerous. Predators moved more freely in darkness. Visibility dropped. The fire created a strange kind of pause, a window of forced stillness, but not forced silence. And into that window poured something new, extended, uninterrupted, imaginative conversation, night after night, for generation after generation. Let's reconstruct one of those nights. The light is low, flickering orange against a dark backdrop of trees and stars. The group sits in a loose circle, faces lit warm, backs fading into shadow. Someone finishes eating and begins to speak, not about the day's hunt, but about a grandmother who once tricked a lion, or a star that fell to earth and became a person. Children lean in, wide-eyed. An elder corrects a small detail, insisting the story be told the right way, the way it has always been told. Laughter breaks out, then quiets again as the next voice picks up the thread. No one is working. No one needs to be anywhere else. For an hour, maybe two, the entire group exists inside a shared imagined world, built entirely out of sound, memory, and firelight. This wasn't entertainment in the way we use that word today. It was rehearsal. Rehearsal for cooperation, since stories often modeled how people should treat one another. Rehearsal for morality, since myths frequently carried warnings about greed, betrayal, or the value of generosity toward the group. Rehearsal for memory, since these stories preserved history, geography, and survival knowledge across generations with no written record at all. And rehearsal for imagination itself, the ability to picture something that isn't physically present, which is the same mental skill later required for planning ahead, for tool innovation, for teaching, and eventually for art. Archaeological evidence backs up how early and how central fire became to human life. At Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa, researchers found burned bone and ash layers dating back roughly 1 million years. among the earliest strong evidence of controlled fire use by early humans. This wasn't a rare accident. A single lightning strike caught and forgotten. It was a habit, repeated in the same location, deep inside a cave, over and over, where it could only have been deliberate. Later evidence deepens the picture even further. At Blombos Cave, also in South Africa, archaeologists uncovered engraved ochre and shell beads dating back roughly 70,000 years. Some of the earliest known evidence of symbolic behavior in humans. Ochre needs to be prepared. Beads need to be pierced and strung. None of this happens without spare time, spare attention, and a mind already comfortable working with abstraction. Firelit evenings may have been exactly the setting where that kind of unhurried, symbolic thinking first had room to grow. And once fire became reliable, it changed more than diet and conversation. It changed the shape of the day itself. Before fire, active hours were tied almost entirely to daylight. After fire, humans gained several extra hours of usable time. Hours that were physically safe but too dark for most practical labor. Something had to fill that time. Across cultures, separated by oceans and thousands of years, the answer was strikingly similar. Talk, story, music, in some of its earliest forms. Ritual. Here is the counterintuitive twist. You might assume fire's biggest gift to human evolution was survival. Warmth, protection from predators, cooked meat, easier to digest and richer in usable calories. All of that is true, and all of it was essential. But Wiessner's research points to something less obvious and arguably more important. Fire didn't just keep humans alive. It created the first reliable stage for imagination, a nightly appointment where the human mind was trained, generation after generation, to think beyond the present moment, beyond the immediate task, beyond the people physically standing in front of it. That's not a small side effect. That may be one of the foundations of human culture itself. Without a dependable window of safe, unstructured darkness, would storytelling have developed as quickly? Would myth, religion, and eventually written history have taken the shape they did? The fire didn't just illuminate the night. It may have illuminated an entirely new way of thinking. Now think about your own evenings. You probably don't gather around an open flame anymore, but you likely still seek out a version of that same ritual. A screen glowing in a dark room, a group chat lighting up at night, a story, a show, a video, consumed after the practical work of the day is finally done. The impulse hasn't disappeared. It has simply changed its light source, from orange flame to blue glow. There's a difference worth noticing, though. Firelight conversation was reciprocal. Someone spoke, and others responded, corrected, added detail, laughed, argued gently over how the story should go. It was built together, in real time, by everyone present, shaped by every voice around the circle. Much of your modern nighttime glow is one-directional. You receive, you scroll, you watch. The imaginative stretching Wiessner documented depended on a circle of people building a shared world out loud, not a single person absorbing content alone in silence. That doesn't mean modern screens are the enemy. It means something ancient and specific may be quietly missing from how you use them. The hour after dark, once reserved for shared imagination, is now more often spent in isolated consumption. One person, one glow, no circle at all. Maybe that's worth changing, even slightly. Not by returning to actual campfires, though that certainly wouldn't hurt, but by protecting some version of that nightly window. A conversation with no agenda. A story told out loud instead of streamed silently. A pause where the mind is allowed to wander somewhere it hasn't been all day. Alongside people who wander there with you. You lean toward the light again, whatever form it takes tonight. And somewhere underneath the glow, whether it comes from a screen or an actual flame, the same ancient invitation is still waiting. Not simply to survive the night, but to imagine your way through it. Together.